I had recently formed a partnership with a small production facility in my area. Our contract was based on capital investment, along with designing and implementing new automation processes. Initially, this project was estimated to take 2 years, but I managed to complete it in just 8 months. The facility was a typical small production site with around 50 production workers, operating in 2 shifts of 12 hours each, with 2 days on and 3 days off. They had 2 production supervisors for each shift and 1 maintenance supervisor for each shift. It was the people and their attitude that ultimately led to my decision to become more than an outside contractor for this company. To get a better understanding of the situation, I decided to work the night shift for a week during a shutdown that was required to implement specific line upgrades. It was during this time that I met him, the catalyst of change in this story. We'll call him Richard Head. In our initial encounters, Richard seemed like a decent guy, but my perspective drastically changed when I heard him in his element, directing his maintenance crew during the night shift over the radio. Richard's behavior was appalling. He belittled his maintenance crew, using derogatory language, and treated them with utter disrespect. He would call them stupid when they faced difficulties troubleshooting issues, insult their physical appearance, and even used racial slurs. The racial slur incident was particularly disturbing. The employee he targeted had been with the company since its inception. Witnessing such behavior made me question my commitment to the company. I decided to take action. I escalated the issue to the plant manager, highlighting Richard's deplorable conduct. However, to my shock, the manager dismissed the complaints, claiming it was just friendly banter and insisted that there were rarely any grievances against Richard. This was because anyone who dared to report him in confidence was eventually exposed and subjected to retaliation until their employment was terminated. Frustrated by the lack of support, I began documenting every incident I observed over the radio, keeping track of the date, time, witnesses, and the specific rights violated by the victims, in accordance with state and federal laws. I also documented personal accounts from the maintenance crew. Harassment was a major problem in the industry, but I knew that the company killer was retaliation, and if I could gather enough evidence, I could prove it. On one occasion, I witnessed Richard verbally attacking a 50-year-old colleague who had requested 2 days off due to his nephew's involvement in a serious car accident. It was an emotional time for the employee, and Richard's response was heartless. While I wanted to confront Richard, I knew it would jeopardize my documentation efforts. I gathered the maintenance crew and shared all the evidence with them. Although they initially underestimated the significance of my documentation, they acknowledged the power of the radio recordings as evidence. With this newfound determination, they decided to expose Richard's behavior. They coordinated a day to reveal the truth and submitted their well-documented grievances. The action they took was reminiscent of a classic underdog sports movie. Richard was finally terminated, and the entire atmosphere in the facility changed dramatically. Notably, older machines operated more efficiently than ever before, and employees started enjoying their work once again. To my surprise, they put a placard on my office door that read "Number 1 Boss," but someone had crossed out "Boss" and added "Badass" underneath. I initially removed it from my office door, but I couldn't help but appreciate the sentiment and now proudly display it in my home office. It was the best gesture I've ever received from a facility, reminding me that standing up for what's right can bring about positive change.
I grew up in a small, tight-knit town where everyone knew everyone else's business. Unfortunately, my family's business was anything but ordinary. My father, a man whose life was marred by alcoholism, abuse, and violence, cast a long, dark shadow over my formative years. My sister managed to escape this nightmare when she was accepted into a prestigious high school far away from our hometown. I couldn't blame her for leaving me behind to deal with our father's cruelty, but I couldn't help resenting her for it. The scars of his physical and emotional abuse ran deep, and as we grew older, I grew more resilient and determined to escape this living hell. Our town's life revolved around the local factory, which was the primary source of employment and livelihood for the community. My mother, despite dealing with the turbulent situation at home, worked there to support us. But when the Defense Ministry took control of the factory, they decided to make cuts, leaving my mother jobless. This happened shortly after she had given birth to me, and my father, surprisingly, managed to secure a military status that significantly boosted his pension, thanks to some shady connections. My childhood was marred by the constant threat of violence, and I grew up with anger management issues and mental instability. The turning point came when I turned 18, and I seized the opportunity to enlist in the military. It was my ticket out of this hellhole. Several years later, my military service ended with an honorable discharge, but I was diagnosed with mental health problems. The military insurance I received provided me with a financial cushion and a newfound perspective on life. I decided it was time to escape the memories of my hometown, and I moved to the city where my sister had built a life for herself. Before leaving, my father, never one to miss a chance to be cruel, scoffed at me, saying, "You'll never make it." Little did he know that this time, he would be proven wrong. In the city, I took on a blue-collar job and embarked on a journey to build a career in IT while working on my mental health. But my ties to my hometown still remained, and I would visit periodically to offer support to my mother during the turmoil caused by my father's health issues. During one of these visits, I made a startling discovery. My sister, now a successful and financially stable individual, was shouldering the burden of my father's cancer treatment. She paid for his operations, treatments, hospital stays, and recoveries, even as she was buying her first car and moving into a new house. This generous gesture, however, unraveled a web of deceit and betrayal that would lead to a profound transformation in our family. My mother was left in tears after a call from my father, informing her about his affair. I initially brushed it off, thinking it was just another of their usual disagreements, but the truth soon became undeniable. My sister came to visit with my niece, ready to share the joy of her pregnancy, but the revelation of my father's infidelity shattered what should have been a joyous occasion. The family was in turmoil, with my mother contemplating divorce. My sister, my mother, and I were determined to cut ties with my father. His side of the family, however, took his side, blaming my mother for exposing the affair. They accused my sister and me of ingratitude. A twist of fate presented me with a unique opportunity for revenge. Unbeknownst to my father, a house and a piece of land were in my name due to an inheritance loophole. This gave me the power to challenge his claims and rewrite the family's financial legacy. My sister and I sought legal counsel to understand our options. The lawyer revealed that we could ensure a fair divorce settlement for my mother by providing evidence of my father's infidelity before their separation. This evidence, it turned out, was hidden in an old, damaged phone that I had kept. We confronted my father with an ultimatum: either he relinquished all claims to the house and assets or faced a lawsuit that would expose his marital betrayal, potentially landing him in prison. Under immense pressure, he reluctantly agreed to our terms. But our revenge didn't stop there. We went after the money my sister had spent on my father's medical bills, seizing his assets with the help of bailiffs. We watched with satisfaction as his prized possessions were repossessed, causing him financial and emotional turmoil. I then reported my father to the factory, exposing the fact that his pension was granted on the condition of good behavior, which he had clearly violated. The factory stripped him of his rank, reducing his pension to a fraction of its original amount. In a final act of vengeance, I elevated myself to the position of head of the family, presiding over the annual family gathering. My father was relegated to a table of scornful elders, his comments drowned out by the weight of his transgressions. Today, my father lives a lonely life, abandoned by his mistress and left to confront the consequences of his actions. He tried to initiate contact with my mother, hoping for reconciliation, but we blocked any attempts. My aunt, who had disavowed us for financial gain, found herself in a cycle of harassment and debt repayment. Through an anonymous online campaign, we exposed her lavish spending habits to her creditors, causing her humiliation and financial struggles. As the head of the family, I cemented my authority and control over family affairs, overshadowing my father at every turn. Though the wounds of the past may never fully heal, my triumph over my tormentor brought a measure of closure and a chance for redemption. My actions serve as a testament to the idea that even in the face of the darkest circumstances, strength, determination, and justice can prevail, leading to a brighter future.
Throughout the entire year, there was a crime wave of people having things stolen out of their locked lockers. Not everyone, but enough that everyone knew someone it happened to. The school's only defense about this was that it was our fault for sharing locker combos with our friends. They also charged us every time we had to get the combination changed on a locker, like after a theft, for instance, because it was assumed to be our fault. Well, I had my graphing calculator taken out of my locker. I also never gave out my combination to anyone, primarily because my friends were jackasses and we pulled pranks on each other all the time. So I was out $150 for the calculator and another $150 to change the combination, getting a locksmith to change out the lock. This was 2003 money, so it's a bit more than now. Anyone who has ever had to buy a TI-86 in 2003 or 2004 knows how much those things cost. But here's where the story takes a remarkable turn. My dad happened to be drinking buddies with one of the county detectives. I'll call him Detective Buddy or Uncle Buddy. He went in to talk to the school about this string of thefts so he could get the security camera footage for the day my calculator went missing. The school, however, brushed him off, claiming it was a non-existent problem and that I must have given up my locker combination. The principal even told him he would need a warrant to get the camera footage, and when Detective Buddy obtained that warrant, the school fought it in court, citing student privacy. Cue the pro-revenge. Detective Buddy shows up at our house with a laptop and a laptop bag and tells me, "Throw this in your locker and tell everyone you know about your brand new laptop." "Okay, Uncle Buddy," I replied. 3 days later, I show up at my locker between classes, and the laptop is gone, the bag too, nowhere to be seen. A 24-ounce bottle of Coke and possibly some pens are missing as well. I take out my phone and text Detective Buddy that the laptop got stolen. "Stand by for the show." "Oh, and you reported the theft to the police FYI, he replies. "Okay," I reply, still confused. I go about the rest of my day without hearing anything back. The following morning, Detective Buddy arrives at the school with 3 uniformed officers, pulling a student named Dave out of class, along with his mom, who works in the front office. The principal is furious, but I don't actually hear the cops. I can see the principal's anger as he had to deal with the audacity of being accused of theft and taking his students out of school. Well, it turns out there was a tracker in the laptop bag, and Uncle Buddy got a warrant to search a particular house. The laptop's value was over $1,000, making it a felony. The next afternoon, he set up a tent just outside the school grounds with a banner that read, "If you've had something stolen from your locker, see me." By the next morning, Dave and his mom made the newspaper. Dave allegedly used his mom's login information to get onto the school network and obtain locker combinations. He would then open random lockers, looking for valuables to steal if he didn't have info on a specific locker to target. The situation escalated quickly. Dave was charged with 9 felonies and 35 misdemeanor charges. Each locker counted as a separate misdemeanor unless the stolen object was worth more than $1,000, in which case it became a felony. The felonies amounted to over $12,000, and the misdemeanors were around $3,000 in total value. However, it's important to note that this only represented the stolen items that could be proven. They didn't let the thieves plead to anything, so it became the highest profile crime in the area and one of the worst crime sprees the county had seen in decades. Next up on the revenge agenda, everyone who had been charged $150 to get their locker combinations changed sued the school district in a class action lawsuit. They argued that the school did nothing to investigate the 44 proven cases of locker theft and charged students to change locker combinations. The class consisted of 218 people, and after attorney's fees, everyone received $85. The principal lost his job for not addressing the massive problem reported to him. The criminal trial and the fallout followed. The prosecutor's initial deal was 10 years in prison for Dave, 5 in juvie and 5 in adult prison, and 15 for Dave's mom. They refused the deal, and it went to trial. Dave got 1 year in prison for each felony and 1 month probation for each misdemeanor, totaling 9 years plus 35 months of probation. His mom received 18 years in jail and 6 years of probation. In the end, I got my graphing calculator back, engraved with my name inside the battery compartment. I still have it, along with a remarkable story to tell.